Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. We are going to be discussing the desktop system for publishing eCTDs, the second of a four-part series covering the various common options for creating your eCTD submissions. Note, this call is being recorded. If you are uncomfortable with your question and, of course, the answer and potentially your name showing up in a video, please disconnect now, and I will send you an email when this is available on our website. The follow-up disclosure, we are talking about publishing services. And while Aquila does not sell any publishing software, we do provide publishing service. We are an outsourcing partner. Any recommendations or any systems mentioned is our opinion, and every sponsor has a unique scenario where some things may fit better than others. My name is Josh Boutwell, and I founded Aquila Solutions in 2010. And since then, we've been helping a wide variety of sponsors create all sorts of different submissions all across the world. And in addition to doing actual publishing, we've been assisting sponsors as they develop their own internal teams, which of course includes selecting a publishing system. So this is a list of today's topics. First, we're going to discuss the 4 different types of publishing methods. Then into some detail about the desktop system, what it is, what it includes. Then a little bit about installation and validation. There's some things to consider for costs. And then we'll do some pros and cons on the desktop system as opposed to other types of publishing systems. There will be time for questions at the end, and of course we'll cover our next lunch and learn at the very end. What is required by sponsors as they publish their eCTD sequences? It's true regardless of the method you use. Number 1, and you have to be able to assess your regulatory strategy. By I mean is how are you going to be using your IND? How are you going to be using your DMF? Will it be a single person to a single sponsor, or are you going to be selling it to a wide range of sponsors? Is your application going to be U.S. only, or do you expect to go international? We have additional indications or additional dosage forms. These sorts of questions have to be discussed prior to your publishing activities. It flows into life cycle planning, which is identifying how you're going to use these requirements, the regulatory strategy requirements, the limitations of the eCTD format, and the legal and regulatory requirements of submission. Project management, and this is a critical function. The regulatory operations and your publishing group in general provide project management on for the actual publishing steps. Just as an example, a typical NDA, like a B1 NDA of a couple 100,000 pages, will take around 2,000 man-hours just to go from source documents to final submission. That's a rule of thumb that's fairly safe. And your publishing group needs to provide the project management for that part of the project. Otherwise, you will end up having significant slippage on your project, and your that your submission will end up going in late, which every sponsor knows is never a good thing. Document tracking. Especially with large submissions, the documents are in process, authored while the submission is being constructed. So to have some sort of system in place that manages the version control for your documents to ensure that the publishing group doesn't end up getting an older version or somehow the author is locked out or something like that. This is typically, document tracking is typically a separate system, usually an EDMS or even a Win file system, but it needs to be considered and dealt with in your workflow planning for your publishing process. Document remediation, and this is really the first step that most sponsors think about when they talk about publishing. This is taking your Word documents and your freshly scanned PDFs, getting into the right format, putting in all your links and your bookmarks, everything like that, and making it look all pretty for the reviewer. And of course, putting it in Backbone, putting it in your folder structure, getting it all to work together. We have submission QC. This is sadly skipped by, or at least minimized by a lot of sponsors as a way to save time because of lack of good project management earlier in the project. And the part where you go through and you look at every page in your multiple 100,000-page submission and ensure that the remediation was done correctly, that all links exist and point to where they're supposed to. It's a very important step and is usually about 15 to 20% of the total publishing time. And then you have your ESG gateway management for the FDA and other, like the EU has a couple of different systems. Health Canada is developing a system, Swissmedic is developing a system. To the system needs to be able to interact with these gateways at the very least by creating a compliant submission that you can move over, that a publisher can move over to and submit essentially directly. So what are 4 different publishing methods? Well, today we're going to be talking about desktop. Desktop is defined as a single user system. So it's the moral equivalent of buying a copy of Microsoft Office. If you're a consumer, you go into a store or go online, you buy a license, you are authorized to install it on one computer, use it in one computer. And yes, Microsoft and, well, pretty much every other company now has ways of verifying that you're not installing it on multiple computers. The SaaS, software as a service, known as the cloud. This is when you've got a large system, an advanced system that is owned and maintained by someone else on someone else's servers, potentially even third and fourth party servers they're given access to, or on a limited basis, usually on a per user or per mission basis. Outsourcing partners, and this is what Aquila is, an outsourcing partner. We take your documents and we process them using our systems, our workflows, our programs we developed internally, and present you with a compliant eCTD. Usually this is the easiest for you, although overall, if you have a large number of submissions, it will be more expensive than having an internal system, usually not significantly. Then finally, we have the enterprise system. This is the type of system that people, when they do their initial search for eCTD, run across, and then panic and want to hide from the entire concept. These are extremely expensive. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, multiple, minimum multiple users, significant IT support, and months and months of validation efforts. Generally, only the largest companies can really use these cost effectively. So, we have different systems, but what exactly is a desktop system? So systems are very limited publishing systems. They only do a few of the activities, the total number of activities done is required for submission. They create a backbone, and this is done according to the current eCTD requirements from ICH, FDA, and or whoever else you're submitting to. This sort of, if it doesn't do this, it's not an eCTD system. They provide a life cycle view. Since eCTD sequences, an eCTD application is a living document, and each sequence can affect every other sequence. This will combine all the sequences you've submitted and exactly what's current, have interacted with each other, and when things were removed. It is a critical thing for maintaining your application. Next, it can provide control access to submissions. Control access to submissions. By this, I mean you don't necessarily want everyone in your company being able to get to your eCTD. These are notoriously fickle when people wander through their folder structures. And by using a system that provides your lifecycle view or other direct views of the eCTD in a controlled manner, you can keep people from having to go through the folder system and potentially damaging the application, while giving them the ability to look at the application and reference it, or even better, QC it. And finally, desktop systems do provide some integration with authoring activities, and most of them, I'll say all of them, but the vast majority can integrate with EDMS systems and can be restricted to just finalized documents or something like that. This idea of what's involved. So your publisher. And all of this is happening on the publisher's personal computer. And typically, you need at least 3 different things. Number one, you obviously need the desktop software. This is a nice little friendly eCTD triangle. Word. Most of the documents will come in, especially the non-reports, and CMC documents come in as Word and must be processed and converted to PDFs. Major limits of desktop publishing for eCTDs is that they never have significant or honestly very useful remediation tools, as in it's impossible to create books and bookmarks and links into PDFs using only desktop software. You have to have Adobe Standard or the equivalent, and you really, really, really want some advanced PDF tools. These are very expensive and are not included in this. And then, of course, you have to connect to your file system. This can be an EDMS, this can be a Windows file system, what you want. Now, we also have a reviewer over here. Depending on the system you select and the permissions that are assigned, there may need to have a copy of the desktop software in order to view it, or you may go directly to the folder system and again risk the ditching your application. So the common components, obviously, tools. You need to manipulate your PDFs. A tool so that your reviewers can look at your application, QC it, and after it's been submitted, actually reference it. It's, you need to be able to remember what you submitted. You use a file system to store your authored documents as well as your final eCTD. You'll need eCTD software itself. I personally recommend a set of templates. These provide some guidance and some structure that really isn't available in the desktop system itself. Now, actually getting the thing. The desktop system is that it's very easy to install. It's usually you just download the software and install it. That being said, you need to do some minimal validation on it. There should provide an IQ script for you, and if they don't, they are not a quality vendor. Do not purchase their software. These scripts may cost a little bit extra, but they have to be available, or else you should not use their software. There will always be an IQ, there may be an OQ. You want to do some of both. It does not have to be sort of a huge project, but it needs to be documented. You'll need some basic IT support to make sure that everything integrates correctly with your EDMS system or your file system. Like I've been saying, eCTDs can be very fickle with where they're saved. If you save them the wrong way, all links will break, or potentially even it'll add extra files or corrupt your XML or your PDFs, and you won't even be able to send it anymore. And then you have training and workflow development. And this is training for the publisher. And if you've got a publishing system, you need to update how documents are created and provided to your RegOps team before you use it effectively. And this really involves training the authors or creating at least checklists of what qualifies a document to be final. So, generally, we've seen about a week for the initial validation. This is, you install it, you run through the IQ, usually it messes up on you, you uninstall it, you reinstall it, run it again, it works, and you figure out how to do a very short OQ. This depends on the system. Sometimes it can be a day, as long as a month. One thing to watch out for, desk systems do not provide much guidance as far as submission strategies for eCTD. They won't let you create a blatantly bad eCTD, a technically flawed eCTD. If you don't know how all the sequences work together and you don't know how the DA and your reviewers will look at these documents, you'll end up putting it together in a way that will just make your life difficult. And there's no guidance in these desktop systems to prevent that. They just aren't sophisticated enough to do that. Then you will need other software components not included in the eCTD software. The most important will be your Word, your copy of Word, and your Adobe Standard with your PDF tools. They're including an XPT viewer or editor and stuff like that, perhaps other XML editing tools, but the PDF and the Word documents are the big, the real big expenses. So are we looking at? Some of the things to consider, of course, you've got your purchase price. The software will need to be replaced or updated every 3 to 5 years. This is due as much to software improvements as to changes in the standard. You need PDF manipulation tools. Generally, you do not want to have a publishing group of less than 2 publishers. You need people who are experienced to one to write it, one to QC it. If you don't have this, you'll end up having flawed solutions go through, which is not what anyone wants. Finally, you will need to provide training for your authors and, of course, your publishers and everyone involved in order to integrate these systems with your current operation. So these that we've seen. Generally, the software costs about $6,000 per user. And you won't get any additional hardware because you're assuming everyone has to have a computer to work, so you're just installing it on the existing computer. Secondary software, as in Word, PDF, manipulation, that sort of stuff. That's really about $5,000, primarily for the PDF tools. A personal favorite is TRS Toolbox, which costs about $4,000 per user. That are cheaper and less functional or more expensive, and not particularly more functional, but more expensive. Some options out there, but generally I would expect to spend around $5,000 for extra software. And then training costs. And training costs is total training costs for all your publishers, as well as all your authors and anyone else being affected by this workflow. So these two, the 1,000 and 5,000, are generally per user. Training costs is total. So we're looking at about $16,000 to set up a rough team for the fair. I take that back. We had 7,000 set up a RegOps team for our first year. So 12, 10, and 5. The software is almost always lost, or you have to renew it somehow. Most of the time, your license, you get a 1-year license. So looking at $6,000 per user per year. So for a 2-publisher organization, that's $12,000 per user per year. The secondary software, you usually don't need to replace, or when you do, it's very rarely closer to the 5-year range. This is really just an initial outlay. You don't have that going forward. Desktop publishing systems are significantly cheaper than any other in-source publishing system out there. However, they have significant limits and are still really expensive for small firms. They have a lot of submissions come through to justify the cost. What are the cons? The only one, they're a low initial cost. The organization has decided that they want to have an internal publishing team. A desktop system may be the way to go initially, just to start to develop your workflows, and because it's although you're not putting out a huge amount of money until your people are trained up on the process. It is is not a standalone system. You will need to buy other software if you want to make it work right. There's very little guidance provided for desktop publishing. And eCTD is very technical. It's as complex as doing stability studies. Just you can buy software that tells you what to put in, that creates your stability study, your protocol, but you don't want to stay with that. You want an expert to review it and tell you what you need for your product and for your scenario, not just what meets the requirements. The desktop publishing systems, or every other system, have the highest percentage of annual costs, approaching 100% for so having to buy it again every single year, which I would find very annoying. We don't use that. We have our own internally developed tools, but there are reasons why we did not purchase a top publishing system. So, and please, of course, take this as you want. We've done millions and millions of pages of publishing, and I've seen a lot of companies that have succeeded and failed. And that's where our this advice is really coming from. You need at least 2 publishers. One of them should be a manager level with at least 5 years experience in eCTD. The other can be a coordinator or associate level, but with maybe 1 or 2 years ideally. If you don't have 2 publishers, you will end up having risky submissions being sent to the FDA or EMA because you don't have the experience to see it correctly. Use templates if you have them. Buy them separately. Some systems you can buy them customized for the system, but if you've got the templates, use them. And consider a desktop system only if your company considers a RegOps team to be a critical activity. By that I mean your senior executive has said, in order for us to function as a company, we need to have a completely internal regulatory team. Don't want to send out any regulatory work outside, because we feel that to do so would risk our place in the industry. Are there any questions? Next training, we are going to be discussing SaaS publishing. It'll be similar to what we just saw. It'll be discussing what SaaS publishing systems are, how to integrate them into your organization, and of course, what are the advantages and problems of using these systems. We will be holding it on January 9th, 2016, and we anticipate about 15 to 20 minutes of lecture and as much as 15 minutes of questions. I look forward to seeing you join us at our next talk.